Hello, everyone. Can you guys hear me okay? Hi. Wow, these chairs look really comfortable. If you guys fall asleep, that's okay. I would too. Okay, so I think I've heard some people say, what is the Futures Report? And it is our strategic foresight report. We're going to be launching our second one this spring. We launched one last year, so you guys can look that up. And basically, we have, a framework where we take these signals and trends of the market that we're reading about, hearing about, and we group them into innovation themes called frontiers. And the reason why we do that is because it allows us to unpack and help understand what that really means for enterprises and the clients that we serve. So, I start from here because it's important to know that the signals that we're watching, it's not just from one angle like technology, which is, what South by Southwest is so much about, but it's also beyond to social, economic, environmental, and political angles, and understanding the signals across the board for us to start making sense out of them for our firm and for our clients. So we look across the STEEP framework, and I've heard Sprite, STEP, PEST, all sorts of things, but this is the model that we look at, but they're essentially the same thing. And then I'll just say that, there's a method to the madness. So we're constantly monitoring the data and the signals, but we have to structure and organize it in some sort of a way. So we take those signals, we put them into trends, which are, resemble similar themes in nature, and then we validate to see whether that makes sense for a particular vertical, across industries, all sorts of areas, so that we can then start to break them up and formulate a hypothesis and what we think could happen. And I've heard many talks actually over the weekend about strategic foresight. And I think we all agree that it is not about telling the future, predicting the future, but really understanding what's uncertain so that organizations can then prepare and take action accordingly. So if anything, if you guys walk away from anything at all, I want you guys to think about the 7 frontiers that we're going to talk about and see how that may be relevant to your business and to your organization, so that you can either make investments or you can look to research more, something. Because, chances are we're going to continue to look at some of these areas into the next couple years, and some may actually just drop. In fact, last year we looked at a couple that we're no longer looking at actively just because of the market flow. So that said, let's talk about the 7 just briefly on each. Okay, so we'll start with artificial superintelligence. So we have heard, till our ears are bleeding, all about AI, and it's so important. AI is very relevant to everybody, to all of our clients, essentially. But the frontiers, when we look at these areas, we're actually looking ahead to at least 3 to 5 to 7 years out. So what we mean by superintelligence here is the path towards general intelligence. So AI is very good at doing tasks in a narrow way. We give them something to do, they respond in a certain way. And over time, we're going to see a shift in how that narrow AI models will be more generalized, just like how we're able to bounce one thing to another, multitask, think about different things, connect the dots. That's kind of what we're predicting with AI. And that's what a lot of these AI companies are working towards. But it's not just the advancements in the models, but it's about the processing of data, training, and all the algorithms that are behind the scenes to make that happen. And particularly, we're going to be looking at 2 areas this year, one around humanoid robots that I'm sure you guys are hearing a lot about. So how are they using these intelligent models as they work towards general models to emulate and actually reflect the actions of a human? And then the other area is biotech. We have a research coming up with universities to look into this area to understand what the startups are doing and investing in, and really impacting our healthcare clients. And then computing infrastructure. So this is actually, and all of these frontiers are tied to another, so it's not exclusive, but the infrastructure piece, the way that we are looking at it is actually around the power demand because of AI. we are hearing and we're seeing staggering numbers of how the power that is needed to run these AI models is unprecedented. And we're going to see that, more and more investments will go into energy in order to provide that. Data centers being built out, huge capital intensive projects. And we're hearing, projects like Stargate all over the place. Apple is investing in data centers. So we want to understand what this means for not only the computing infrastructure world, but also the implications and the intersections of the energy sector. The other thing that we're also looking at is how AI is also transforming the architecture of computing in general. It's making it more efficient, and it's going to change the way things are with the cloud infrastructure, data centers on-prem, and the models that need to run. So we're starting to work with our clients to really understand how they can make that process cheaper, better, faster, easier. And then the final one that I'll talk about in this particular one is the next generation of computing. So I'll talk a little bit about quantum, which is a separate frontier. But now we're starting to see a lot of research going into non-traditional computing that we know, not the classical, but areas like quantum computing. What does that mean? Neuromorphic computing, how it emulates the human brain and really helps to organize and run AI models to support the general intelligence that I just talked about. So let's talk about quantum computing. Quantum computing is interesting because it's just a completely different way to do computing. I mean, we understand classical, the way that we do things and databases and running models. Quantum is just everything all at once at the same time all the time. Like, that's kind of how I think about it. And the reason why it's a breakthrough is because quantum enables problems to be solved in a way they have never been solved before, because it could take years and decades to solve, but quantum in the way that they are run can actually solve some of those problems. The joke within the quantum world is that quantum is 5 years out, and that has been the last 20 years. So it's not here, it's not commercialized, although we are seeing advancements in chips. You've probably heard about Microsoft, Google, AWS rolling out their quantum chips that are huge deals in the quantum industry. And then even in the Cleveland Clinic, I don't know if you guys are near that location, but in the cafeteria, there's actually a live quantum computer in the middle of the cafeteria that actually runs some of the use cases, which is really cool because it has a huge implication in the medical field because, again, these are really hard problems. Quantum can enable that. But that's the good quantum. I kind of like to start there because I think it's easy for us to understand from an optimistic perspective, but there is bad quantum. And that's actually what we're focusing on right now because there is actually no quantum needed at all. But what that really means is when quantum happens, let's say 5 years out, for the sake of this argument, it will actually break all encryption that we understand because, again, it's able to challenge these problems and it can break the encryptions that all of the organizations, especially financial institutions, government, imagine if they could break into the system. What is that going to mean? It's a huge threat. So it's a cybersecurity issue, and understanding the risks associated to that and understanding how you mitigate and come up with a plan for whenever that is to be is the bad quantum. So, now there's good and the bad. Space economy, I should have put this in the last one because people like to say it's the final frontier. Haha. But space economy is just the way that we look at it is actually not just the space and the rockets that are launching. We see that all the time and it's fascinating, but it's the space plus. And what I mean by that is over the last decades, the cost to launch satellites into, or the rockets into space has dramatically decreased. And what that really means is it actually opens up it breaks down barriers to entry. So we are seeing, it used to be a huge government play with the funding going in from NASA and agencies and defense, but now we're seeing a lot of private sectors and startups that are investing in this space. And that means there are many, many players. And that's why we say space plus, because if you think about the satellite imagery data that are being collected, it is helping not only the defense world, but it's helping agriculture, understanding sustainability, understanding what it means for logistics. So it is actually a horizontal play where you can leverage the space economy to benefit and create use cases that will impact the entire enterprise organization. So that's a little bit about the space economy. Digital assets, oh man, we've been looking at this space for years as a company. We looked at it when Web3 was a big thing, and we looked at it when Metaverse was a big thing. And we have shifted our narrative a little bit this year to be only focused on digital assets. And that is because of the level of innovation going in and the traction that we are getting as a country based upon some of the new administrative changes and the crypto market being so volatile. Last year we hit $100,000, but it quickly goes down. I mean, within a day you'll see like a 20% variance. So we watch this because what it means is that it is an area that people are continuing to invest in and innovate in. And we're seeing a couple of different things. So there's real tokenization of real world assets. You think of real estate or other financial products, and they're being tokenized on blockchain so that you can own a fraction of an asset and distribute it across the board. And it's just, a way to kind of think about, just like crypto. Crypto, you don't necessarily own one thing. Millions of people can own one thing at a fraction of a cost. So we're starting to see that with different things besides crypto, which is fascinating. And a lot of the financial institutions and banks are actually not only investing in crypto, but they are leveraging the decentralized finance with their centralized finance processes together to be more efficient and cheaper. Because again, these are real-time transactions, lower cost, and I think we're now at a point where technology is a lot better and it's more trusted. So there's more adoption. And that's something that we're going to continue to see. And then finally, the only thing that I wanted to mention was in January of this year, the Trump administration actually released one of the regulations that required banks and institutions to report their crypto as a full liability. They are no longer requiring institutions to do that. You can only they're only required to report whatever is at risk at a portion. And that really means that, more banks will probably invest more in crypto. It's going to, again, lower the barrier to entry. So excited to see this space. Huge implications for our clients, especially in the financial services sector, and providing, a roadmap and a strategy to how we can help them. Environmental resilience, it is no surprise that the world is changing. There are implications from environment, climate, and that's, companies are going to continue to try to unpack what that really means to them. How do they become more resilient so that they are not going to, fall apart when an event happens? And it's a constant. And I think it's an issue actually with the smaller businesses when you don't have that strategy and long-term investment to spend on these climate and environmental issues. So that's sort of the angle that we're talking about. And there is no shortage of climate tech companies. I'm sure you've talked to many, many of them here today. I think we're now at a point where we need to help hone in and focus on one or two or three different areas for this year and the next couple years to come so that we can help scale. Because I think with climate tech, it is so saturated that it is not easily scalable at this time. And that's kind of what we want to take a look at. And then finally, advanced manufacturing. There's a huge push to, have manufacturing onshore in the U.S. A lot of investments going in, for semiconductor industry, manufacturing, and that means money. And that means more innovation. So we're going to take a look closely at this area to see how we can help our clients understand audit, tax, advisory implications, and really move towards America kind of picking the manufacturing back up again and having more movement and action in this space. I had a lot more slides, but I actually decided to just stay here because I think, it's just too much information. But again, it doesn't mean some of the other frontiers are not relevant and not important. It's just how we take a look at it for the areas that are most impactful to our clients and for our firm. And we will be launching the report in spring, so probably at the end of this month or next month. And you guys can take a look at, what some of the experts, we're going to have some quotes from internal experts, external luminaries, and really kind of bring that together and help understand the business implications, because these are just, sometimes they're so far-fetched that it's hard to bring that messaging home. And I do think there's a near-term and a longer-term implication to all of these frontiers.